This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Fuel Stories. All right. So, Ron, now that we've talked about your band and music, let's talk about your books. Unfortunately, because we had a literal 48-hour window, I'm a quick reader, but in order for me to read 500 pages in one day, that would not do justice to your book. That's not fair to you or me.
You could do it. Come on.
I've done it. But I didn't like it. I don't like reading like that. I like to be able to chew on a book, and especially because, oh my God. Okay, so I'm gonna gush a little bit here. The only story I was able to read was Mr. Cable's. So okay. Your pacing, these are my notes here, again on yellow legal pad. Your pacing is flawless. Like, oh my God. I was blown away by your storytelling, having never read any of your stuff before, not having any introduction to you at all. And this being the first time where I'm literally tasting your words. Holy crap. Holy crap. So speaking of which, you say, this is one of my, there's a couple of things that are, that just stuck out in my head.
Right.
And speaking of taste, so on page 34, I could taste my heartbeat at the back of my throat. My words to that are fucking brilliant. And Norman Rockwell after the apocalypse on page 59. I was just like, again, damn, Jimmy, that's some gourmet shit.
I wrote that. That's pretty good.
So thank you for that most amazing. And I did start Black Mouth a little bit last night. I was able to check that out from the library. So I did start Black Mouth last night. So, and again, just wow. So let's talk about you and like, where do these stories come from? Because you have you've got quite a library of books, and they're all very different. They're not just horror. You have thriller, right? You have mystery. Like, yeah,
they all have a touch of like they are very ambiguous books. They don't know what they want to be necessarily, so they walk this tightrope, and I hope they don't fall off. That's kind of what I let them do.
So you've been writing since you were a kid.
I have. I mean, you know, I was always kind of artistic. So drawing, playing music, writing. You know, if I started doing something, I kind of did it 100% when it came to those sort of things. I bought a typewriter when I was like 11 years old at a garage sale, and I think I was always a voracious reader. I loved to read, but at the time I bought it, I was reading my first Stephen King book, which wasn't even a horror book. It was the Eyes of the Dragon, and so I bought this typewriter, went home, and basically plagiarized his novel in like short story form. Just kind of, you know, just enjoying writing a story, and I wound up doing that. Typing up these little stories for years throughout elementary school. You know, into middle school, high school. I mean, they became bigger and bigger stories, you know, as I got older. But I mean, I still have like 2 steamer trunks full of them. I used to draw these covers for them and staple them together and bug my family and my friends to read them. But yeah, I was doing it for a while. And by the time I graduated college, I had, I don't know, like 6 or so full-length novel manuscripts written. So I took the first one, or the one I thought was the best. Tried to put off getting a real job for as long as possible, so I shopped it around, and I had a small press pick it up and publish it the following year, which which I thought was awesome until I realized really what publishing is about. And that was a great learning experience because I didn't make a dime. They were a terrible publisher. I couldn't just sit by a fireplace and smoke a pipe and talk about literature. I actually had to work. So, but it was a good experience. And you know, what's worked for me over the years is just with each subsequent book that I would write, I would kind of move more and more up the publishing ladder. I did early on in my career a lot of small press, indie press publications. Then I got, into more of a mainstream mass market publications, hardcover releases, stuff like that. And until I was at a place where I felt, I got an agent who moved me to the next step. So everything kind of came piecemeal for me over a length of time. I'm not somebody who just came out of the gate and just signed some big book deal and that's that, which is probably best because I don't do well with sudden bursts of it's better that I had to work my way up, and it also let me kind of hone my craft a little bit. Some of those earlier novels are blessedly out of print, but it was a good experience. And for me, especially back then when I was younger, I wrote like crazy. My entire career, which is a little over 20 years now as a writer, I've been doing about a book a year that's my publishing schedule, with some other things kind of stuck in the middle there. But early on, I was writing maybe 3 novels a year and then publishing one. So I would always have this backlog of other stuff I can go to. I was just doing it so frequently, and I just, I would write 40 pages a night and I could have a book done in a month if I really busted my butt. Part of what allowed me to climb that ladder and take some time to do this is the fact that I had so much material that I was working on. If I only had like 1 or 2 good books left in me, I would have shot my load with those two smaller publishers, and we wouldn't be talking. But so fortunately, I had a lot of stamina and energy and zeal when I was a little Ron. Now I'm just tired and lazy. I don't know.
I was going to ask you. That was actually one of the questions. Was do you have an agent? Like, we can talk about like the writing process, but before we get into that, I'd like to ask you a few more questions. So, Mr. Cables, you mentioned drinking coffee. So one of my favorite podcast questions to the guests is, how much coffee do you drink in a day? And what is your go-to coffee?
So I used to drink a lot. I used to finish a pot of coffee and then make another pot. I was big in that. I drink it black. I'm not necessarily too picky with what kind I'm drinking, but like I'm not a big Starbucks guy. I'll go and drive to I like McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and if I never buy it, but the coffee I like the best because of the smell of it, it's nostalgic, is the chock full of nuts one, because my grandmother used to always have it, right?
That yellow can, letters,
and it's probably the only one that's still in a metal container. that'll survive like doomsday. But yeah, for some reason I don't have that. But I'm not flavor picky, but like just strong black, let's get it done, right? And I drink a lot of it. But that's the most innocuous thing I'll drink when I'm writing.
Okay, so speaking of which, you mentioned Merlot in the story, Mr. Cables, and you also mentioned I don't know.
Dewar's.
That's it. Dewar's.
Yeah.
I've never actually had Dewar's, but I do like whiskey and I do like Scotch, and it's a Scotch whiskey. I had to look it up. Yum.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I'm a big Scotch whiskey bourbon kind of guy. The wine I threw in there just to every character's got their own thing. I do like wine, but I'm a whiskey guy. But the main character of that story seems like he would have sat down and had a glass of wine, so that's why it's in there. But
there you go.
I do have a lot of people read my stuff and go, "Do you drink a lot?" Because an awful lot about there could be a murder scene that's 10 pages long. 7 of those pages is describing the drink.
That's awesome.
See, as you get further into Black Mouth, the main character is trying to be a recovering alcoholic, and it's 500 pages of point of view from him. And ashamed to say, I think I nailed it. But
I got to the part where he's giving the backstory about how he just got out of rehab.
Yeah.
So I'm right there, and then he gets the bad news, and
Yeah.
so he's kind of giving you the backstory about that. And so I love that you talk about food. So for me, in order for me to feel truly, I don't want to say connected to a character, but characters can be flat if an author doesn't give them human character, right? I mean, going to the bathroom. So you actually nailed this. So you referred to food. So one of the things I pay attention to, and I'm kind of weird like that, is I want to see a character eat. I want to read a character eating, drinking, and or showering or going to the bathroom. Now you like, you have to give them human qualities in order to feel like it's not just some that you're reading. Right. And so you mentioned orange chicken and spaghetti, obviously not at the same time because that would be gross. But it was making me want pasta. So we're actually having pasta for dinner tonight. So thank you. Then you also mentioned an egg salad on rye. And that's interesting because I don't think I've ever actually read an egg salad on rye in any other books that that's interesting.
So you're coming at it from a point of view of I'm making them realistic because I'm showing the everyday toils of a human being, eating, drinking, going to the bathroom, taking a shower, whatever they need to do. But also, like, when you look at what it is that he's having. So this is a single middle-aged guy, right, who is on the road a lot, who has somebody who takes care of his house. So what does he eat? Orange chicken, which is takeout, spaghetti, which is easy to make, and egg salad on rye because that's probably what was lying around, right? So it's not only that I'm showing you eating, you get, authors who don't use that as an opportunity to give you insight into a character are really missing out. Some of my favorite scenes, there's, again, I think it's in Black Mouth, there's a scene where you got 4 of the characters at a diner, and they all order something completely different. And I don't belabor it, but if you're reading the book, one character ordered 2 plates of pancakes, another character doesn't, orders a salad but doesn't even eat it, right? Like, so it really gives you insight. You know that from life. Like, I'm sure you have friends where you go out and you're like, I know this dude's gonna order this, and she's gonna order this, and this guy's gonna eat my pickle off my plate, because that's what, and that's what makes those people real, right?
Yeah.
So that's stuff you got. I look for that, even when I'm writing.
The last question about food and or coffee was, do you debate on whether a character is going to, so you were talking about how you think this guy's going to drink wine. So this relates to this question. Do you debate on whether a character is going to drink coffee or tea?
Look, all that's game. Tea is, I don't know if I'm sure I have had somebody drink tea at some point. It's more about how individual people take their coffee, again, which adds to that, their character.
Yes.
Right? Same way with how they would, if they're involved in a scene and someone asks if they want to drink, whether or not they'll say yes or no to it. Or if they have one. I just finished a new manuscript like yesterday or 2 days ago, and I was conscious of the fact that I have a lot of books with alcoholics in it up until this point, so I didn't really want to explore. But this book also does have 1 or 2 people who like to drink heavily, but my main character doesn't, which is unique for me. So I was aware of him, and and a friend of his owns a bar, so I was aware of having to curtail, what my natural inclination would be in real life, to get more to this character who's more of a straight-laced attorney who is not. He may have 1 drink and move on because it's socially acceptable. He's not going to pound 3 and then forget where his car keys are, right? He's not that guy. So, and again, you don't belabor this. It's just it's a throwaway thing that's when somebody is reading a book, but it resonates with the character. People subconsciously understand what kind of person that is, just based on those little nuances.
Absolutely. And I love that you understand the importance of that. And again, I think that, and I don't write. I've never written a novel. I just finished my little, what I call mini memoir. So my storytelling is based off of real life events. Right. So I don't want to say that's kind of like cheating or like that's the easy way to write. Because writing is, regardless of what type of writing is like, it's a part of you. Like we bleed, it's to quote, Hemingway, like it's no big deal. You just bleed on the paper. And that's true. But so this is why I have mad respect for authors who actually do take the time to make the characters eat, drink, and then, like you said, what they eat and what they drink and how they do these things really can, again, me personally, it's how I connect with the character to follow them through this path that the author is creating for this.
No, actually, and well, kind of to that point, there's so much truth in fiction that I'm basically telling a made-up story by using settings, locations, people, or an amalgamation of people that I've known or things that I've seen in my life to create something original. But it all comes from the same place. It's probably, in writing your memoir, you're reflecting on people you've known and what their behaviors are. So if they're in those scenes that you're writing, you're going to portray them the way they are in real life. Well, it's really no different in fiction. You're just taking those things that you observe and you see and you go, okay, well, I know that my dad smokes these no names brand cigarettes because he's a cheap bastard. So, so I know like what that looks like and what that means when it just says cigarettes on it. He might as well be drinking booze out of a jug with X's on it. Like that's kind of, it colors the character. But people like that exist. I'm not making up that part of it, right? I'm not saying here's what it means to eat orange chicken out of a carton. People already know this dude's living alone. He's got leftover food in his house, and he has to cook it spaghetti. Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for like going into that. And again, this is why the writing process is so, it's so unique and special to every author. And so thank you for taking us into your head, besides, just letting us read your words. And then one final thing I wanted to mention was, as I was reading Mr. Cables, because it's your job to take me on a ride, and my job is to strap in and just hang on, right? But as a reader, we do like to kind of go, where is he going to take us? Where are we going? What's going to happen, right? So just the name alone, right? The name alone. So these are my notes. So the name, Mr. Cables, who is the puppet? Who is the puppet master? These, I'm like, where? Right? And then when he meets Mr. Finter, it felt very Twilight Zone. It's kind of as you were taking me through the story, I was feeling like Mr. Finter. He reminded me of Burgess Meredith, where he's got the books and he's got the glasses. And that episode. So I kind of felt like you took me into like that episode. It kind of felt really cool to get really gruesome. Every time you talked about the bus, especially because the bus had it wasn't a very pristine bus feel. It had a very beat up bus feel. Right. All I kept, and I'm ruined now because of Clive Barker, but every time I think of a bus, I think of Midnight Meat Train, goddammit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so every time you would mention bus, I was like, is it? So again, I'm strapped in and I'm like, oh, where is he gonna take me? Is he gonna make it gruesome? Like, where are we going with this? So it was really cool. Again, this was my introduction to you as a writer. Right. And so your prose, your pacing, your storytelling, I think it was like the perfect introduction to meet you online here and to meet your words. So thank you for sharing that story. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I appreciate all the nice things that you've said. This has been very nice to hear.
But it's true. I don't blow sunshine. That's the one thing I pride myself on, is I pride myself on being authentic and truly connecting. And that's why, to have this experience with you, to share the band with you, to share your band with others, so they can connect to you, so they can get to know you. So I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for answering all of my silly questions and being part of this new podcast experience. Like I said, I've got the 2 different shows and you qualified for both categories. So I'm super excited to share you on both places. Great.
No, this is great. I Michelle, I really appreciate having me on. This is awesome. And I wish you luck with both shows. This is great. I'm a fan now. I'm going to listen.
Thank you. So, my tagline, usually what I do is I have the guests take us out with the tagline. So, the tagline for this show is "Let's get amped." So, if you could send us off with a "Let's get amped."
You got it. Let's get amped.
Thank you for tuning in to Radio UNK, a special feature of Coffee Fueled Stories. I'm your host, DJ Unicorn, and this week's guest, American novelist Ronald Malfi, shared his writing process in part 2 of our chat. If you missed part 1, it's an excellent episode. Here's a snippet of Blackmouth to tease you with his words. Thank you for hanging out. Go forth and be magical.
Blackmouth by Ronald Malfi. Chapter 1. Detox Boogie. 1 week after our mother committed suicide, my brother Dennis was taken into police custody while walking along the shoulder of a winding mountain highway wearing nothing but a pair of saggy white briefs and what I can only assume to be an empty expression on his face. He had made it 6 miles out of town, which meant he'd been walking for hours beneath the blazing summer sun. When the police found him, he was dehydrated. His face was lobster red and glistening, his chest and shoulders blistered with sunburn, and the hairless bulge of his belly, which drooped over the frayed waistband of his underwear, was jeweled with sweat. He must have looked like some ripened tropical fruit, freshly washed. The only exception was his feet, which were bare and powdered in road dust. With each step he took, he stamped asterisks of blood onto the pavement.